Come one, come all to the first installment in the Invictus Debate Basics lecture series given by your lovely seniors. The first episode being, What is Debate? These are the basics, an introduction to this weird rabbit hole by me, your captain, Frank Lasilag. So, let's do it. What is debate? It is a game of towers. So, you are given a motion, obviously, a topic, and there are teams, and they will take sides. There aren't always two teams. Sometimes there are more teams, but we'll get into that in a bit. And you debate on the topic. So there's a side for the topic, there's a side against the topic, and you have to prove that you are better. The topic has no right answer as to whether you should be on one side or the other side. You're not trying to prove that you are right. You are simply trying to prove that what you are fighting for is better than what they are fighting for, and that an adjudicator, a judge, should take your side. So, what is the flow of a typical debate round? So, after you are given a motion, which mind you is on the spot, you're not allowed to research beforehand, you prepare with your team for 15 minutes for British parliamentary and 30 minutes for Asian parliamentary. Those are the two main debate formats. And again, no researching. Speakers then are given 7 minutes to deliver a speech, and there's a speaking order. So depending on the position you choose to speak, same as all games, Ultimate Frisbee has positions, basketball has positions. So does debate, because debate's definitely a sport. And then an adjudicator listens to all the speeches given by everybody in the debate, and they evaluate the arguments given from the perspective of an average reasonable person, and then gives the more convincing team the win, or the team that is better able to sway them to say, okay, this side seems like they're better than the other side. I would rather side with this side as an average reasonable person. That's the mindset a judge takes. So, what are the speaker positions themselves? There are two main formats in debating. There are more than just these two, but these are the two main ones in the Philippines that people debate in. The first one is Asian parliamentary. It's a rather familiar one to those who are grade 8 incoming grade 9. I believe you did this for your debate project. It's very simple. You have a government or a proposition side who is for the motion, and an opposition side which is against the motion. And each side will have three speakers. You can ignore the thing about replies for now. They aren't as important, but there are only three speakers per team, although each team does give four speeches. So one person repeats for the reply. But very briefly, I suppose, I do I have slides here for, okay, I do. Okay. Just had to make sure. For BP or British Parliamentary, it's a little bit different. You have closing and opening teams. So the opening government is obviously still for, the opening opposition is still against the motion, but the closing government will still be for the motion, but they will still be fighting against their opening government. That is, they have to debate the same side as their opening government, but they have to do it better. So they have to explain why their arguments are better built. They have to explain why the new things they're introducing in the debate are more relevant, or perhaps what the debate should be about, right? So as you can see, BP is a game of relevance more than direct comparisons. So there is still a lot of direct comparisons, whereas AP is a lot more rigorous and in-depth with the direct comparisons of each of both sides, rather. This is the actual format, by the way. So in an actual classroom, you will have chairs on this side, and you'll have chairs on this side, and you'll have a podium over here where the debaters get up and they speak, while the adjudicators on the opposite side. You know. So briefly on the roles of each speaker, and I will try to make this short because this won't be a lecture that gives you all the tools to speak each role perfectly. But very basically, the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition in Asian Parliamentary, as this is the format we will be focusing on this summer, are the first two speakers from each side. They open the debate. So they present the case to the judge. They outline all the important points of the case. They give the arguments in their complete form, and they have to be the most clear as they are the first speaker. So if something is unclear from the very start, it's not likely it'll get much clearer as the debate goes, down the bench, especially when the points are being constantly refuted by the other side. So the PM and the LO have the added burden of being extra clear with presentation of the case. Now, the DPM and the DLO, or the deputies, speak second in the order of Asian Parliamentary. They expand the case, they expand the debate, they introduce new angles. They also weigh and analyze the opening clash. That is, if you are a deputy prime minister over here, you will explain why your prime minister and you are so far winning over the leader of the opposition, which obviously means that you respond to the leader of the opposition's case if you are deputy prime minister. So that's what responding to the opposite first is. If you're deputy leader of opposition, you directly respond to prime minister as well as deputy prime minister, and you generally speaking cover a lot of ground. So DPM and DLO sacrifice a bit of precision in the things they explain for breadth, and that they cover a lot of ground to make sure that the debate is as complete as possible. I suppose that's what you could think about it. Again, these are all very general statements, and I will get more in depth into these roles in future lectures. Now, the government whip and opposition whip. So this is a rather unique role in the sense that no constructives are allowed here, which is that you can't introduce any new arguments, you can't introduce any new angles. What you have to do is summarize the debate, say everything that both sides said, and say why you're winning, and you have to respond and weigh all the contributions left standing in the debate, which is why as a last speaker, you have to have very good tracking, you have the most in-depth attacks, whereas the deputies might cover a lot of ground but not be as precise. As a whip, you have to be incredibly precise with the things you respond to, with your prioritization, with, summarizing the debate, and basically spoon-feeding to the adjudicator why you win. So, let's cover motions and motion types. A motion, very simply, is just the topic being debated on. So again, for example, this house believes that parents should not tell their adopted children that they are adopted. So government team here will say, yes, we don't think parents should tell their children that they are adopted. Opposition will say, no, we think that the children deserve to know that they are adopted. And motion wording can completely change a debate dynamic. That is, some little words in the motion, especially these first few words, the this house portion. And we'll get into that in a few seconds. But you have to pay special attention to this. So let's look at some motion types. You will see many different formats of motion. So for example, this one being this house would. This is a rather common, all these are rather common. But this house would and this house believes that are probably the first few ones you encounter. And here you will already begin to see in some of these motion types the differences that small words can make. And I want to note, because a lot of people have this people have clashing ideas of what the house is. Some people say it's the government, some people say it's the people in the the debate who are deliberating. I prefer to think of the house as a sort of abstract body that has the ability to carry out certain things, has a consciousness, has a mind that can support or not support things. But I don't want to associate the house with any specific real life actors, just to make the debate as, I suppose the premise of the debate to be as agreeable as possible so that the debate becomes clear and the teams become engaging. That being said, let's talk about a few different kinds of motions. And you will see this at the start of lots of motions, this format of letters. So for example, in the motion, this house would ban gacha games. There are certain nuances to each motion type which change the dynamic. So for instance, this motion is different from the motion this house believes that gacha games are morally deplorable, because just because you believe that gacha games are morally deplorable doesn't necessarily mean that you would ban them. In fact, you could make an argument saying even if they're morally deplorable, we should allow people to enjoy them. And there are other things as well, which are, for example, if you are debating on a this house would ban gacha games motion, that's different from this house believes that gacha games should be banned. Because in a this house would ban gacha games, you have the added burden on government side to explain exactly how you're going to ban it. Because it's a this house would. It's a policy motion, you have to explain the implementation. Whereas a this house believes that motion is a value judgment motion. That is that all you have to do is explain why you ought believe they should be banned or you ought believe they should not be banned, not necessarily the specifics of how they are banned. In a very similar way, this house as X actor would, sorry, I forgot the parentheses there. This house as X actor would motions are the same as this house would motions, but they have the added nuance of explaining why emotions specifically benefit the actor that is carrying out the motions. For example, this house as the government would ban gacha games is different from this house would ban gacha games because in this motion at the bottom, you as proposition have to say why banning gacha games specifically benefits the government. Not the one in the debate, the one in the state. The one, that has lawmakers and officials and politicians. You have to explain that banning gacha games will be good for them specifically, and all other benefits in the debate are useless unless they tie back to why they benefit the government. Versus, in this House of Band Gacha games, you're talking about the general welfare. So if you want to talk about gamers, if you want to talk about parents, if you want to talk about kids, if you want to talk about gaming companies, all of those are valid actors, and the weighing of which actors are most important depends on what is discussed in the debate. Just a few more examples before we go on. You will also encounter this House regrets motions. For example, this House regrets the existence of Invictus, VSHSMC's official speech and debate club. We have weekly sessions every Monday and Wednesday. Please join the Discord and attend. So, in this motion, when you regret the existence of something, what you are doing is imagining an alternate reality where this never happened. So your burden here as proposition is to explain what would have happened if Invictus never existed. What would have taken its place? Where would the people of Invictus right now be? So would there be a different debate club with different rules? Would there be no debate club at all? That's for you to prove. That's different from something like this house prefers a world where it's very similar, but not exactly the same. I suppose the way you could think about this is when you prefer a world where Invictus didn't exist, what you are comparing is a world where you are sure that Invictus does not exist and the current state of the world right now, which is the world we live in where Invictus does exist, versus when you regret the existence of Invictus, you are debating the timeline leading up to the formation of Invictus, the founding of it, the impact it's had in the Bisay community, etc., etc. Again, very similar. You'll learn the nuances as we go on. I think a more clear one to illustrate is the difference on this house supports and opposes motions. So when you say this house supports the existence of Invictus, you do not necessarily have to talk about the entire, history of Invictus and everything. I guess what you would be talking about here is something more proximate to Invictus in its current state. So you no longer have to talk about, I guess you could still talk about things in the past, but again, just these little, but the point I'm really trying to drive across here is that these little changes in wording do change the way that a debate is played out. So for example, when you are opposing this, you're on the other side here, where you don't like the existence of Invictus, you don't have the burden of proving what would have taken its place unless government team pushes that burden onto you, versus you have an inherent burden of explaining what would have happened otherwise in this House regrets motions when you regret the existence of Invictus. Again, a lot of nuances. I've said it like a million times, but you'll get it as you go on. I think that's pretty much everything. So at this point, I want to keep the section short. I just want to say good luck, have fun. We will be uploading very soon. They should already be up by the time you're seeing this video. The other lectures. The next one will be about argumentation. After that, we will talk about responses and framing and setup. And hopefully after, we will have a lecture about prep time strategy and using your prep time well. Good luck on your debate career. Bye.